Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope it shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace it shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love it shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
Good morning and welcome to Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Reverend Joanna. Welcome to this community where our mission is to embrace joy, enrich connections, encourage growth, and empower dreams. I'm so glad that you could join us. If this is your first time here, we are so glad that you are joining us. After the service, if you go to liveoakuu.org, you're going to see some things that you might be interested in. First of all, if you'd like some more information about us, there's a little form that you can fill out where you give us your name and your email address. Don't worry, we're not going to be like knocking on your door or anything. We'll just email you, introduce ourselves, and let you know that we're here if you have any questions. If you'd like your questions answered a little bit more quickly right after the service, we have what is effectively an online visitors table, and you'll find that link again at liveoakuu.org. It says just for visitors. It'll take you to a Zoom room, and there'll be a couple of people in there who can answer any questions that you might have and maybe get to know you a little bit better too. Then you can also sign up at liveoakuu.org for our weekly newsletter, and that's going to give you an idea about everything that is happening here at the church. It is tradition in Unitarian Universalist churches to light a chalice at the beginning of our worship services and our gatherings. So if you have a candle or a chalice near you, if you could draw it towards you as we all light our chalices together.
Good morning. I'm Carrie Krause, the Director of Lifespan Faith Development at Live Oak. Thank you for joining us for worship today. Today's big idea is called Diana's White House Garden by Elisa Carbone and illustrated by Jen Hill. Before I tell the story, I'd like to share a little bit of the illustrator's notes with you. She wanted to portray this story with historical accuracy in her illustrations. And the story took place in 1943, and segregation was still legal. Eleanor Roosevelt, who was a staunch advocate for civil rights, insisted that the White House domestic staff be African American. Therefore, you will see all the staff in the book illustrated as African Americans. Diana Hopkins lived in a White House, the White House. She lived there with her father, Harry Hopkins, who was the president's chief advisor, and the housekeepers and the butlers, and George, the groundskeeper, and of course, President Roosevelt and his wife, Eleanor. It was 1943, and the White House was a busy place. The United States was at war. American soldiers were fighting across the world. "We all need to do our part to win this war," President Roosevelt said. Diana wanted to do her part, but what could a 10-year-old girl do? "I could be a spy," Diana decided. To practice, she snuck into the dumbwaiter and rode it down to the White House basement kitchen. But Mrs. Nesbitt, the head housekeeper, caught her. "I know," said Diana. "I could be a city official. Those are the important people who hang signs like air raid shelter and buy war bonds." To practice, she painted a very important sign, but where to hang it? Diana lifted the sign and hung it outside her father's office. "Quarantine, measles, keep out." At supper, her father sighed. "What if the president needed me, but my office said keep out?" Diana promised not to hang any more signs. What if enemies tried to come to the White House, Diana wondered. How could they be kept away? She had an idea. She put pins in all the satin chairs in the red room, the green room, and the blue room. Sharp pins sticking straight up that would send enemies away in a hurry. The housekeepers found the pins just in time for Eleanor Roosevelt's formal afternoon tea. Well, they found most of the pins anyway. Mrs. Roosevelt was not happy, and she sent Diana to her room. One evening, Diana went to the Oval Office where her father was chatting with the president. "Harry, I've decided I want the food our farmers grow to go right to the soldiers. I want to be sure they are well fed and strong." Mr. Hopkins frowned. "But then what will our civilians eat?" he said. "I want people to grow their own food," said the president. "I want every backyard and vacant lot turned into a garden. To get the ball rolling, Mrs. Roosevelt and I want to start a victory garden right here on the White House lawn." Diana's eyes grew wide and she sucked in her breath. "I could help." Diana's father bought her a pair of overalls so that she could get to work right away. Diana worked with George. They turned over the soil, they fertilized with chicken manure, and then Diana planted bean seeds and carrot seeds, cabbage and tomatoes. Soon, the new seedlings came up healthy and strong. Diana wondered when there would be something to harvest. Gardens sure do take a lot of waiting. One day, Mrs. Roosevelt told Diana to dress in her overalls and brush her hair and meet her in the garden. When she got there, there were two strangers. "Ah, the little girl who is inspiring the whole country," said the woman as she began to take pictures. "How does it feel to be helping with the war effort?" said the man. "It feels very good," Diana said. A few days later, her father brought her a newspaper. "Diana farms her White House plot," the headline read. The article went on to say how all across America people were plowing up city parks and vacant lots, backyards and even front yards, and planting fruits and vegetables. President Roosevelt's plan was working, and she was an important part of it. One day, finally, the tomatoes were ripe. The green beans hung like slender fingers, and the carrots pushed their orange shoulders up out of the ground. That evening, the White House cook made a wonderful supper: beef stew with carrots and green beans, cabbage salad, and sliced tomatoes. "Diana, you've done a fine job," said President Roosevelt, "and not just in your own backyard, but for the whole country."
Standing in line, marking time, waiting for the welfare dime, 'cause they can't buy a job. A man in a silk suit hurries by and catches the poor lady's eyes. Just for fun, he says, "Get a job, yeah." That's just the way it is. Some things will never change. They say that's just the way it is. Oh, but don't you believe them? They said, "Hey little boy, you can't go where the others go, 'cause you don't look like they do." I said, "Hey old man, how can you stand to think that way? Did you really think about it before you made the rules?" But he said, "Son, that's just the way it is." I said, "Some things are gonna have to change. That's just the way it is." But I don't believe that. They passed a law in '64 to give those who ain't got a little more, but it only goes so far, 'cause the law don't change another's mind when all they see at the hiring time is the line on the color bar. Maybe that's just the way it is. some things were gonna change. And that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. It is, it is, it is. Just the way it is. Some things were gonna change. That's just the way it is. It is, it is, it is.
It's interesting and quite a bit scary how much stuff is just absorbed by us through our culture as statements of fact that we may never even think to question. I'm a fan of Doctor Who, the British TV show, and I was watching this episode that was made some years ago called The Doctor Dances. It's set at the time of the London Blitz, and it ends with a completely happy ending. The normally cranky doctor is just jubilant, and he shouts out to everyone,
"Right, you lot, lots to do. Beat the Germans, save the world, don't forget the welfare state."
When I heard that, I was like, yeah, beat the Germans, save the world, don't forget the... What? I grew up at a time where I came of age in the 80s, and so I had only ever heard welfare state used as a pejorative, as an insult that one politician would hurl against another. But here the doctor was, and he was acting like this was a great thing, almost on par with saving the world. What? The welfare state in Great Britain had its origins, just like this episode of Doctor Who, in the Blitz, in the time of Great Britain being in World War II. Now, Great Britain had already gone through a difficult time, just like the US with the Great Depression, a time of extreme poverty that they called the Hungry 30s. Then you had the Blitz, the attack on Great Britain by Germany. And many things were unveiled through that, the extreme inequities in the society. Because not unlike the US right now during the pandemic, it was easy to see that, yes, they were in the same ocean, but they were on very different boats. Some people were surviving the bombing down in the bunker of the Savoy or out at their country estate, while other Britons were trying to survive underneath a piece of corrugated steel in their backyard or down in the tubes, the subways of London. Added to this was a feeling of unity with each other. They were all fighting a common enemy. And out of that arose an ethic in the country that prioritized the lives of the citizens over business interests. They knew that they would have to rebuild their country, and to use a recent phrase, they wanted to build back better. They didn't want to go back to what they had already experienced because they were able to see now how unfair it was and how it was not good for the country as a whole. On top of that, many of the leaders in the country felt that in order to win the war, that they needed to be able to give something for the people to fight for, an alternative to life in Germany. And I think that as liberals, I think there's a little detail in here that we could learn from. Because I admit, when I first read that about how they needed to provide an alternative, I was kind of like, well, Great Britain wasn't taking people and putting them in concentration camps and killing them. Wasn't that a good enough alternative? And I think that we liberals often think like that, but the thing is, you need more in order to have revolutionary change, and in order to become the country that you want to be. You have to have more than simply saying we are not this evil that exists over there or that existed before us. You have to create a better vision, and you have to come up with something that will provide a better way of life for everyone. Also, in Great Britain, it wasn't just the people, it wasn't just the soldiers who were fighting the enemy. It was also the people who were at home helping with the war effort there, making tremendous sacrifice. People felt that there needed to be a reward at the end of this for all of this work and sacrifice. So in 1941, during the Blitz, as the bombs were falling, the government commissioned a committee and a report to try and brainstorm, envision what this better world could be that they would rebuild. They pulled together people from the different civil service agencies, the Department of Labor, the Department of the Treasury, the Department of Health, the Department of Customs and Excise taxes. They brought all of these people together to do this big brainstorming. And the person that they put in charge of it, the person who was the chairman, was a man named Sir William Beveridge. He was an economist and a liberal politician. And they worked collectively, but much of the credit is given to Beveridge for drafting this and kind of being the visionary behind it. And this committee started their report, their 300-page report of recommendations with 3 guiding principles. The first guiding principle was that they were not going to be limited, they were not going to be restricted by sectional interest, or what we might call interest groups or the different agencies. They needed to think bigger than that. And in the words of William Beveridge, a revolutionary moment in the world's history is a time for revolution, not for patching. Their second guiding principle was that all of these proposals were coming out of the idea that they needed to look at everything holistically. They needed to look at all of the big problems in society. What was it that served as barriers to creating a better world? And then they named them. They said that the 5 great evils were squalor, ignorance, want, idleness, and disease. Their third guiding principle was about how they were going to do this, what they felt was the way to achieve this kind of meaningful, revolutionary change. And they said that social care for citizens must be achieved by cooperation between the state and the individual. The state should offer security for service and contribution. The state, in organizing security, should not stifle incentive, opportunity, responsibility. In establishing a national minimum, it should leave room and encouragement for voluntary action by each individual to provide more than the minimum for himself and his family. It was the 40s. They were still operating under certain sexist assumptions, namely that the head of the household would be a man, which incidentally wound up being kind of problematic a little ways down the road because so many of the women had been widowed from the war. But it was a very good start. So in 1942, they released their report, the Report on Social Insurance and Allied Services. But it came to be known simply as the Beveridge Report. And if you go looking for it now, if you put in the Beveridge Report, that's what it's called. That report has been called the most important 20th century document in British history. And it was a whole comprehensive program, not just something that would help the poor in times of crisis, but a program that was for all Britons, that covered their health and education and what would happen if they were aged or sick. A family allowance and full-time employment. That was also part of this, was the government taking responsibility for making sure that full-time employment would be available for all. The reaction at the time was overwhelmingly positive. A survey taken around that time showed that like 86% of the country fully supported it. In general, wherever there was any concern, it was about how are we going to pay for it, but not the idea that they should have something like this. This was fully supported by the Labor Party, but the Conservative Party too was supporting this. Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister, and he put out a radio statement talking about his plan for after the war. And he used the term that many of us may have heard of cradle to grave, talking about the health care and the insurance for all of the citizens. He said, healthy citizens are the greatest asset that any country can have. And this was revolutionary. It transformed the country, and it has evolved over the decades since then as they learned different things, depending on what was happening economically in the country. And of course, there would be some little movements depending on which political party was in power. But by and large, the welfare state is still a big part of Great Britain. Those guiding principles of the Beveridge Report have become part of the culture itself, and they have endured. So here we are at what could be a pivotal moment in U.S. history. We are standing amongst the rubble of our own fight for democracy here in our own country, as our country suffers from this deadly pandemic that has taken so many lives. And this pandemic, much like the Blitz, has unveiled so many of the inequities in our country, as well as things that we really need. Looking at the situation that so many of us are in as we attempt to educate or help with the education of our children at home, we have to face the fact that daycare, but not just for little kids, is an integral part of our economy that we have just allowed to take the form of public schooling. And so what would it mean if we expanded that and had some kind of a universal childcare for all ages? But I'm not here to try and argue what should be in our version of a Beveridge Report. But I absolutely am arguing that we should have some type of a guiding document that will lay out a plan for how to transform our society. A movement to set up a functional American welfare state that is good for the citizens and good for the economy must be informed by and rooted in dismantling white supremacy. Because white supremacy is what got us here. White supremacy is what has created this system. White supremacy has shaped how we view even the very word welfare. As Sir Beveridge said, a revolutionary time in the world's history calls for revolution, not for patching. Following the lead of those who have been studying this and living this is our path forward. And here's a challenge for you and me. Building solidarity is a necessary part of building a national welfare state. You got to have that. That's why it was able to work in Great Britain. We have to begin speaking of our vision and maintaining connections where we can. Again, I'm not talking about giving up your principles. And if you are someone who has been victimized, I absolutely am not saying that you need to be making friends with your oppressor. But when you are in a situation, or again, one of those small collectives that make up your world, to be able to make some connections, that's going to be what will enable us to create this national solidarity. And talk of the vision and challenge the misconceptions. When someone speaks disparagingly about welfare, point out that, well, actually welfare is literally in the preamble to our Constitution as being why we even have a Constitution and why we have this government, that it's to promote the welfare of the citizens. We are stronger as a collective than we are as individuals. That's why we have this nation. And as a collective, as a nation, we can create a society where everyone is able to get what they need. We will emerge from this grim period of fighting for democracy in our own country and fighting a deadly pandemic that has taken so many lives. We will emerge. And as that saying goes, if you have to go through hell, don't come out empty-handed. I believe that that applies to a country as well as to us as individuals. We have learned so much during this time period. Let's use the wisdom that we have earned that cost so much. Let's move forward, not just to try and fix what has been broken in the last 4 years, but fix what was broken before that, or fix what was working exactly as it was intended, but the intention was not good. One of the prices of American exceptionalism is that it often means we don't look at other countries and say, oh, hey, they did a thing and it was a good thing and maybe we can learn from them. But we can, and we can build a better country. So, right you lot, lots to do. Beat the fascists, save the world. Don't forget about the welfare state.
sit at the welcome table. We're gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days, hallelujah. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. All kinds of people around that table. All kinds of people around
Thank you for joining us for this worship service. A special thank you going out to everyone who helped make this service possible, our musicians and our producers and everyone who was involved. And now we're going to get together for what we call our fellowship time. There is a link at liveoqu.org. You can click that and you're going to go into a Zoom room with all of us. We'll chat for a few minutes, then we'll go into just randomly assigned breakout rooms and chat a little bit about how we're doing. And everyone is invited and welcome to that. And using those words from Great Britain during World War II, kind of paraphrasing, but may you go forward with courage, cheerfulness, and resolution.
Soon the day will arise when we will be together, and no longer will we live in fear. And the children will smile without wondering whether on that day thunder clouds will appear. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see